In this video, I will show you multiple ways I go about troubleshooting and/or avoiding these annoying outlines on alpha textures using Photoshop, Substance Designer, and Substance Painter. So first off, I like to figure out what's going on. Substance Designer is incredibly powerful for troubleshooting issues related to the various channels within an image, be it JPEG or PNG. So I start off by importing the texture into a substance graph to do a little analysis. Here are some random textures, some made by me and some just downloaded from Google Images for the sake of illustration. Who knows where you're getting your textures from? So the reason why we get these artifacts has to do with the fact that although a PNG with transparency may look like there is no color where the image is transparent, those pixels actually do have a color. That would be visible if for some reason the transparency were gone. So to check this, the first thing I do is click on this little icon in the 2D view. This toggles the visibility of the transparent pixels. So basically, transparency is ignored and we get to see what color those hidden pixels actually have. Here we can see that, in fact, those pixels are white or black or whatever else, which is dumb since we often can't avoid them showing up. So our goal is for these pixels to have a color that doesn't look like garbage. Now, this video is going to be separated into two sections, prevention and solution. In the prevention section, I'll show a few ways to avoid the issue altogether during the creation of textures. And in the second section, I'll show you solutions in Substance Designer if you weren't the creator of the texture. Prevention. So let's avoid alpha bleeding in textures created in Photoshop. I stumbled upon this little trick while preparing this video. Turns out that when you export PNGs out of Photoshop, the result is different based on whether you click on Quick Export as PNG or Export As and then choose PNG. Let's look at it in Designer. As you can see, the Quick Export adds an inflated outline of pixels in the color of the design, and the Export As option just fills everything with black. So, a little hack seems to be to do a quick export as PNG. Oddly enough, I hadn't experienced or at least noticed this behavior in the past, so hopefully this is a universal thing that works. Try it. Now, let's look at a solution for alpha fringing for textures created in Substance Painter. If you created your texture in Substance Painter, here's a way to control what color your outlines will have. You basically just need to overwrite the default white, or I guess gray, background color. So underneath your color layers, add a fill layer with a color that is as close as possible to the color of your shapes. If there are multiple colors, you can also just go ahead and specifically paint around the edges with the corresponding color. You won't really see this unless you go into base color mode. Now, if we export this texture and look at it in Substance Designer, we can see that we no longer have the white background. Alpha fringing prevention in Substance Designer. To avoid horrible outlines around Substance Designer textures that use alpha, we once again want to make sure we're putting colors that make sense behind our subjects. So, for example, here, I first make sure the flower's alpha 0 area is a pink similar to the rest of the flower. Then, when blending the flower together with the grass thingy, I make sure that the flower doesn't use the green background by blending using a mask and selecting the Ignore Alpha blending mode. There are lots of situations where shit could go sideways, and I won't cover them all, but another one would be using a uniform color node with alpha 0 as background for a tile sampler and making sure the color of that seemingly invisible uniform color is one that makes sense considering what is getting tiled. So here I color picked a pink color from the flower and then put alpha to 0 to use as the background. Now let's dive into my favorite way to solve alpha fringing when using textures I didn't author or maybe messed up in the past. I do this in Substance Designer. Always. The first and simplest situation is a texture that consists of only one color, like stylized leaves maybe. Here the trick is to plug that texture into an alpha split node, which separates the color part of the image from the opacity part, which you can then use as a mask. Then we just use a uniform color node in which we color pick the color out of our OG texture and plug that into an alpha merge node using the opacity mask as the grayscale input. This seems almost too obvious to be in this video, but I honestly don't know what's obvious or not anymore, so you have at it. The second situation where you might want to get rid of outlines on alpha textures is one where the texture consists of multiple colors. Here, a possible solution is once again splitting the alpha and then plugging the color output into the color input of a distance node using the opacity mask as the grayscale input. Here you can see that it expands the color area based on the opacity mask. You can change the maximum distance to define how much padding you want. Then you just need to remerge this new color with the original opacity mask. It's so cool. Now, if your texture has some weirdness to it like this one, or your opacity mask isn't contrasty enough, it might help to make a binary black and white mask out of it by using the threshold node. This can help you define where exactly the distance node should begin its expansion. Not sure if this is actually a use case, but there you go.